That was unreal. Hi, I'm Peter Tomarken, and I think. Welcome to Game Show Network, and hello to everyone at the Western Cable Show. Hope you're having a good time out there. What you've been watching was a very special retrospective of the history of game shows, and that's what Game Show Network is all about. The best and the brightest of game shows 24 hours a day. Now, if you're a game show fanatic like I am, what we've got is just what you've been looking for, and a whole lot more. Here are some of the best classic shows we'll be offering to you, the viewer. Shows like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, What's My Line, To Tell the Truth, Password, I've Got a Secret, Match Game, Joker's Wild, Tic-Tac-Toe, Newlywed Game, Dating Game, and Beat the Clock. What did I tell you? Pretty impressive, isn't it? And there's more. You can join me every night for Prime Game from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, where we'll bring you the only live interactive games in town. Interactive games like Decades. This interactive game will test your knowledge of things past and present from the 1910s through the 1990s. And the good news is that everyone watching Game Show Network can play our live interactive games from their own living room. It's just as easy as dialing a phone number. Throughout the day, we'll be instructing you how you can register to become a player. Listen and pay attention to what you must do to get your 8-digit PIN number. Once you got that number, you can play our live interactive games forever. And unlike any other games in town, the call you make to play is a toll-free number. Every call you make is free. And believe you me, you'll want to keep calling as often as you can because the prizes you can win are unreal. And for you early risers who like company with your coffee, tune in and join Steve Day and Laura Chambers on Club AM. They're great from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern as they deliver interesting TV tidbits and answer your phone calls and faxes all live. And by the way, you can also see Steve and Laura every night from midnight to 4 a.m. Eastern with late night games, offering you the best in night owl entertainment on television. Now, why do people like game shows? Well, probably because in many cases you see people just like yourself having fun. And it's also fun to play along at home and see if you can come up with the answers before the contestants. And celebrities, you say? Well, how can we forget the celebrity? From the panel shows of the 50s to the outrageous shows of the 90s, the stars sometimes become as identifiable as the shows themselves. I mean, who doesn't think of Kitty Carlisle when To Tell the Truth comes to mind? And what would What's My Line be without Arlene Francis? To start us off, we take you back to 1950. Harry Truman was in the White House. Mona Lisa and Goodnight Irene were two of the nation's most popular songs. On January 28th, Milton Berle's Texaco Star Theater and Life of Riley won Emmys as top TV shows. 5 days later, on Thursday, February 2nd, CBS premiered a new panel game show from Mark Goodson, Bill Todman Productions. Viewers tuning in were treated to What's My Line, and the treat continued for the next 17 and a half years. Almost everyone in show business and beyond appeared on the show as a mystery guest, from stars like Charlton Heston and Lucille Ball to athletes such as Mickey Mantle and Arthur Ashe. It seemed everyone wanted to enter and sign in, please. Following the CBS version, What's My Line returned for a 7-year run in syndication starting in 1968. The hosts were Wally Brunner and then Larry Blythe. Now, let's take a trip down memory lane and have a look at What's My Line, originally broadcast on March 8, 1953, with panel Bennett Cerf, Dorothy Kilgallen, Steve Allen, Arlene Francis, and of course, the famous mystery guest. What's My Line can be seen right here on Game Show Network each weekday at 8:30 a.m. and as part of Prime Games at 10:20 p.m. Eastern Time. Sometimes game shows have the distinction of having several different incarnations. Sometimes they switch networks. Sometimes they can be seen in both daytime and primetime editions. Our next show can claim all of these. From Goodson Todman Productions, Beat the Clock debuted on CBS as a primetime show in March of 1950. It was hosted by Bud Collyer, who was the radio voice of Superman. Tall and dignified, Collyer managed to convey an air of calm around people performing all sorts of stunts. The first version of Beat the Clock enjoyed a run of almost 11 years. In September of 1957, it started a 1-year stint on CBS daytime. When that ended, ABC picked it up for a 2.5-year run in daytime. But wait, there's more. The show was brought back for syndication in September 1969, hosted by veteran MC Jack Nars. And it's interesting to note that for this version, Beat the Clock was produced in 2 different countries. The first season was taped at the Little Theater in New York City, and a year later, production moved to Montreal, Canada. In 1972, Gene Wood took over the hosting duties for the final 2 years, and as you probably know, Gene is currently the voice of Family Feud. Keeping with the old adage, the show must go on, CBS brought back Beat the Clock for a 4-month daytime run in September 1979. The host this time was Monty Hall. This is one of the few times that Monty hosted a show he didn't actually produce. And the announcer on Monty's version was none other than former host Jack Narves. And just a reminder, you can see Beat the Clock with Bud Collyer weekdays at 6:30 a.m. and with Jack Narves weekdays at 1 p.m. right here on Game Show Network. Now let's have a look at Beat the Clock with Bud Collyer. It's an episode originally broadcast on July 31st, 1954. Here's the premise. Each week, a panel of 4 celebrities cross-examines a contestant to find out their special hidden secret. If you said the show was I've Got a Secret, you're absolutely right. I've Got a Secret hit the airwaves on CBS June 19th, 1952, and stayed on until April 3rd, 1967. The first host of the show was Gary Moore, considered by many to be one of the best hosts ever. I agree. Born Thomas Garrison Morfitt, he also hosted daytime and primetime variety series that ran from 1950 to 1964. His nighttime series launched the career of Carol Burnett. Gary conveyed friendliness and an ease of hosting that few have been able to duplicate. Now, tired of the grind of doing 2 shows, Moore stepped down as host of I've Got a Secret in 1964 and was replaced by Steve Allen, who had been a frequent panelist. The show ran until 1967, and much of the success could be traced to panelists such as Bill Cullen, Henry Morgan, Betsy Palmer, and Bess Meyerson. In 1972, I've Got a Secret came back for a year with Steve Allen in the host chair. Bill Cullen hosted the last version of I've Got a Secret, which was a 4-week summer series for CBS in 1976. We're now pleased to present an episode of I've Got a Secret from June 8, 1960, featuring host Gary Moore and special guest Anthony Perkins. This episode is the last I've Got a Secret from the Mansfield Theater in New York City. Don't forget to tune to Game Show Network Monday through Friday at 7:30 a.m. and during prime games at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for I've Got a Secret. Will the real John Doe please stand up? That became a nationally known question because of the next show in our Game-a-thon, To Tell the Truth. To Tell the Truth began life on CBS as a primetime show December 18, 1956, and was hosted by Bud Collyer. A daytime version joined the CBS lineup in 1962 and continued until 1968. Now, a year after it went off CBS, a new syndicated series of To Tell the Truth hit the air, this time hosted by Gary Moore, with Bill Cullen occasionally filling in. When Moore retired in 1977, Joe Garagiola hosted the final season's episodes. Some of the more familiar panelists of both the CBS and syndicated versions were Orson Bean, Peggy Cass, Bill Cullen, and, of course, Kitty Carlisle. Proving its durability, To Tell the Truth came back again for a year in 1980, hosted by Canadian actor Robin Ward. The show then lay dormant until 1990, when NBC Daytime brought the venerable show back on September 3rd. Now, it should be noted that in its 7-month run, this latest go-around featured 4 different hosts. Australian broadcaster and talk show host Gordon Elliott, followed by Football Hall of Famer Lynn Swann. Then Alex Trebek. Who was the 4th host, you ask? Well, when Alex was called away from the studio when his wife was having a baby, the substitute was none other than Mark Ritson. Now, you can watch To Tell the Truth weekdays on Game Show Network at 8 a.m. and in the evening as part of our prime games at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm not lying when I tell you that you're going to enjoy an episode of To Tell the Truth from November 26, 1959 with host Bud Collyer. We now move forward into the 60s, specifically 1961. It's a whole new era. John F. Kennedy was sworn in as the nation's 35th president. The United States and Russia put men into outer space, and Elvis Presley was hot with songs like Don't Be Cruel and It's Now or Never. 1961 was also the year that FCC Chairman Newton K. Minow called television a vast wasteland, saying it is not enough to cater to the nation's whims, we must also serve the nation's needs. Well, as television moved into the 60s, We at Game Show Network would like to think the nation needed more game shows. And in October, one of TV's classic games made its first appearance. Password was a Goodson Todman production. Password was an instant hit when it premiered, and 3 months to the day after it went on, a nighttime version was seen. Password was hosted by Alan Ludden, and as many of you know, he met his wife, Betty White, when she was a celebrity guest on the show. The nighttime version of Password ran until 1965 and came back for 4 months in 1966. The daytime show ran until 1967. In 1971, ABC brought back Password, as always, hosted by Alan Ludden. In November of 1974, the format was changed to Password All-Stars, with only celebrities playing. In February 1975, contestants were brought back for the final 4 months. NBC brought back Password in 1979 as Password Plus. In a new twist to the game, each password became a clue leading to a person, place, or thing. Alan Ludden hosted Password Plus until he became ill in October 1980. At that time, Tom Kennedy took over as host, and Alan passed away in June of 1981. Tom Kennedy continued as host until Password Plus was taken off in March of 1982. Password would indeed be heard from again in 1984 with a new title, Super Password, and a new host, Bert Convy. It would run for 4.5 years. And there's a lot of Password to be found here on Game Show Network. We have classic Alan Ludden episodes of Password for you each weekday at 7 a.m. and as part of our prime games at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time. We're also pleased to offer Password Plus with Alan Ludden weekdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and also Super Password with Bert Convy, which can be seen during Club AM at 11:55 Eastern, Monday through Friday. We now present Password, originally broadcast in 1966 with guest stars Audrey Meadows and Jerry Lewis. Chuck Barris was an ABC daytime programming executive supervising, among other programs, Dick Clark's American Bandstand. Now, he also dabbled in songwriting, coming up with the hit song Palisades Park for singer Freddie Cannon. He later formed his own TV production company, and in 1965 sold a show to ABC that was like none ever seen before. It featured a set loaded with colorful stylized flowers, a brassy theme song, and, of course, a bevy of bachelors and bachelorettes. It was called The Dating Game, and it was hosted by Jim Lang. Jim was a radio DJ in San Francisco and was also heard as the announcer on the Tennessee Ernie Ford variety show on NBC. The first Dating Game enjoyed 7.5 years on the ABC daytime schedule and a bit over 3 years on ABC prime time. Celebrities often popped in to find a date, and on any given show, you could find the likes of Joe Namath or Burt Reynolds, Zsa Zsa Gabor, and even Groucho Marx showed up to find a date for his daughter. What a dad. People who later became famous also appeared on the Dating Game, like Tom Selleck, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Pee Wee Herman. In 1986, the show returned as the all-new Dating Game with Elaine Joyce. Jeff McGregor then stepped in as the host for the 1987 season. The Dating Game with Jim Lang is on Game Show Network Monday through Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Now that we've told you all about the Dating Game, let's take a look at an episode that dates back to 1970. You're going to see two bachelors you may recognize. One is with the 60s rock group Theme, and the other one is in the first game. Several years before he found fame and fortune, here's the Dating Game. On July 11, 1966, a press conference by Defense Secretary Robert McNamara preempted Password on CBS. And viewers looking for a game show fix tuned into ABC. What they found was the premiere of Chuck Barris' second entry. It was the Newlywed Game, and the host was Los Angeles radio personality Bob Eubanks. Now, Bob has the distinction of being the promoter for the Beatles' first West Coast concert held at the Hollywood Bowl. The Newlywed Game featured 4 couples, married less than a year, seemingly innocent questions that often yielded outrageous answers, and, of course, the grand prize selected especially for the winning couple. Now, you never knew what could happen on the Newlywed Game, and more times than not, a wife would bop her husband on the head with the answer card when he gave an incorrect or even shocking answer. The Newlywed Game ran until 1974 on ABC Daytime and was seen in prime time on ABC from 1967 to 1971. It was also seen from 1977 to 1980 in syndication. The most recent Newlywed Game debuted in September of 1985 and enjoyed several successful years on the air. The Newlywed Game will be part of Game Show Network's weekday afternoon schedule at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Here's the Newlywed Game we've selected especially for you. Get ready now. Here come the Newlyweds. What do you say we take a look at an episode of a series that hasn't been seen since it originally aired 25 years ago? It was a show featuring men and women trying to figure out which mate a computer had them matched with. The Perfect Match, hosted by NBC sportscaster Dick Enberg, was seen in syndication for the 1967-68 season. Dick Enberg is one of the most educated game show hosts, holding a Ph.D. from Indiana University. He also was a college professor at what is now Cal State Northridge. He has also worked major sports for NBC, baseball, football, tennis, you name the sport, and Dick Enberg has called it. He also found time to host 3 other game shows in the 70s, Baffle, 3 for the Money, and Sports Challenge. Now that we've told you everything you wanted to know about Dick Enberg, let's have a look at his hosting debut on The Perfect Match. Well, we're going to change our timeline now and go to the 1970s, and we go to the fall of 1971. Artists like Simon and Garfunkel were topping the pop charts along with Ray Stevens, The Carpenters, and Dionne Warwick. Fiddler on the Roof became the longest-running Broadway musical, and Jesus Christ Superstar was seen for the first time. Our next series appeared in September 1971. It was All About Faces. The executive producer and creator was the late Dan Enright, and the host was Richard Hayes. All About Faces turned hidden camera predicaments into an amusing game show where celebrity couples tried to predict what people would do in those situations. Before we get to the show, here's a little piece of trivia. The man off camera interviewing a young boy during the show is none other than Dan Enright. His life is featured in the movie Quiz Show. Let's now have a look at All About Faces. Jack Berry once worked as an announcer on a children's radio program. He and his partner Dan Enright then thought about building a show around kids and how they would deal with the problems and complexities of life. That show was Juvenile Jury. Hosted by Jack Berry, it aired at various times and networks in the late 40s and early 50s, and again in 1971. The Juvenile Jury episode we have for you is from the 1971 season. We hope you like it. Our next show, The Joker's Wild, debuted September 4th, 1972, which is an important one in game show history, because 2 other favorite shows premiered that same day on CBS. Gambit, which lasted for 3 years, and The New Price is Right, which is still on the air. The Joker's Wild also marked Jack Berry's return to network daytime television following the quiz show scandals of the late 1950s. The Joker's Wild aired on CBS until June of 1975, then returned in syndication in 1977. Jack Berry hosted until his death in 1984. That fall, Bill Cullen took over the hosting duties until the show concluded in 1986. Now, here's one last bit of trivia for you. The original pilot for The Joker's Wild was hosted by Alan Ludden. When CBS scheduled the show, Alan Ludden was busy hosting Password, so Jack Berry ended up hosting the show. Before we start the show, I want to tell you that The Joker's Wild can be seen each morning here on Game Show Network as a part of Club AM at 9:35 Eastern Time. Here's The Joker's Wild with Jack Berry as the host. Following the success of the dating game, the Newlywed Game, and shorter live shows like The Family Game and How's Your Mother-in-Law, Chuck Barris is ready for his next show. It was called The Parent Game. And I must add that the show was co-created by Game Show Network's own Gary Junkie. Originally piloted for NBC Daytime in 1969, The Parent Game hit the air in syndication for 1 year starting in September 1972. The Parent Game was the only game show hosted by radio personality Clark Race. Barris seemed to favor DJs as hosts, and no doubt due to their ability to ad-lib and to think quickly on their feet. The Parent Game was played by 3 married couples who had to match their ideas and views on raising children against those of a child psychologist. The psychologist in this case was Dorothy Johnson of the University of Southern California. So let's have a look back at The Parent Game with Clark Race. Oh, and by the way, you may recognize the voice of the announcer as Charlie O'Donnell, the current voice of Wheel of Fortune. One of Brits and Todman Productions' most successful shows was Match Game. The original Match Game ran on NBC from 1962 to 1969. A more comedy-driven Match Game returned on CBS July 2nd, 1973, with the title Match Game 73. Pretty clever. Hosted as before by Gene Rayburn. Contestants had to match responses with 6 celebrities, and quite often the answers were humorous and even a little suggestive. Sometimes the answers were hysterically off base, like the time a contestant answered the super match Cuckoo Blank with Cuckoo Friend and Ollie, as opposed to Kukla Fran and Ollie. Pretty funny. You had to be there. A regular panelist for Match Game included Brett Summers, Charles Nelson Riley, and Richard Dawson, who left in 1976 to host Family Feud. Match Game changed its title each January 1st and always had an on-air ceremony of ringing in the new year with a new sign on the set. Match Game 79 was the last year the show aired on CBS. However, it didn't miss a beat in continuing its syndication until 1982. There was also a nighttime syndicated version called Match Game PM that aired from 1975 to 1981. Match Game then reappeared in 1983 as a hybrid of 2 classic shows, the Match Game Hollywood Squares Hour. ABC then brought Match Game back for one season in 1990, hosted by Ross Shafer. Now you know almost everything you ever wanted to know about Match Game. The last thing you need to know is that you can see Match Game not once, not twice, folks, but 3 times a day on Game Show Network. Match Game with Ross Shafer Monday through Friday during Club AM at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, and Match Game with Gene Rayburn at 4 p.m. Eastern, and during Prime Games at 7 p.m. Eastern Time each weeknight. Now you know everything. So let's have a look at an episode from blank. Oh, okay, I'll tell you. It was originally seen on CBS in 1973, which would make it Match Game 73, yeah. The original Treasure Hunt was hosted by comedian Jan Murray and seen on ABC and NBC from 1956 to 1959. Producer Chuck Barris bought the rights from Jan Murray and started producing the new Treasure Hunt for syndication in September 1973. The new host was Jeff Edwards. Jeff appeared as the character Jeff Powers on Petticoat Junction in 1968 and was also part of the Bobby Darin Show in 1973. As host of Treasure Hunt, he had to memorize over 30 skits to correspond to all the surprise boxers on stage. Well, he apparently had a good memory. The producer said he never missed a line. Here's a trivia question for you. Do you recall the name of the bonded security agent who revealed the $25,000 check at the end of each episode? Well, I know it's on the tip of your tongue, but because I'm a great guy, I'm going to make you watch the show to find out. So get ready for fun, big prizes, and a few clunks as we watch Treasure Hunt. Do you remember a 1969 show with 4 celebrity couples trying to match answers to questions about their relationship? It was called He Said, She Said. Now, in 1974, Goodson Todman revised the concept for CBS and called it Tattletales, and it was hosted by actor-singer Bert Convy. Bert appeared in several Broadway hits, including Cabaret and Fiddler on the Roof. He also had roles in such TV shows as 77 Sunset Strip, Perry Mason, and Father of the Bride. Bert also won an Emmy as host of Tattletales in 1977. Following Tattletales, he went on to host Super Password in 1984. Bert Convy passed away in July of 1991. Tattletales featured 3 celebrity couples, each playing for 1/3 of the studio audience. Now, some of the couples you could see on the show were Bob and Ginny Newhart, Dick Martin and his wife Dolly, and Alan Ludden and Betty White. Tattletales ran from February 1974 to March 1978 on CBS, then was brought back for 2.5 years in January 1982. The episode you'll be seeing is from 1974, and one of the celebrity couples is Patty Duke and John Astin. You can find Tattletales on Game Show Network Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Every answer to every question is right here before your eyes, and now you see it. That's the opening of our next show, Now You See It. If you like word search puzzles, this is the show for you. All answers are hidden in a grid of 4 lines, and the contestants had to not only know the answers, but find them on the board. Now You See It premiered on CBS on April Fool's Day, 1974. The host was Jack Nars, a veteran who started hosting way back in 1958 on the show Dollar. Jack comes from a game show family. His brother is fellow host Tom Kennedy. The format also had an interesting contestant setup. There were 5 contestants on each show, 2 teams of 2, and the previous day's returning champion. The winning team from round 1 became opponents in round 2, and the winner of round 2 faced off against the returning champion. The person who won that final round played the bonus game. You got that? If you do, give me a call and explain it to me. Now You See It ran until June 13th, 1975, and was brought back briefly on CBS in 1989, hosted by newscaster Chuck Henry. Now You See It with Jack Nards is presented on Game Show Network during Club AM at 10:10 in the morning Eastern Time. Here is Now You See It. We now turn the calendar to Monday, January 6, 1975. What kind of a day was it? Well, it was sort of a bleak day for game show fans, because on Friday the 3rd, NBC had canceled the original Jeopardy! How little did the folks tuning in realize that the show premiering at 10:30 a.m. would end up being one of the most durable shows ever. Chuck Woolery was the first host of Wheel of Fortune, and the first hostess was Susan Stafford. When Chuck left the show at the end of 1981, his replacement was Los Angeles weatherman Pat Sajak. Susan Stafford left in 1982, and she was replaced by an unknown named Vanna White, I think. Yeah. The biggest thing that happened to Wheel of Fortune was in September of 1983, when King World started to syndicate a nighttime version of the show. The show became more successful than ever before, and the nighttime show has remained at or near the top of the ratings ever since. When Pat Sajak left to host his own CBS late-night talk show, former football player Rolf Benirschke took over the hosting job and was followed by Bob Goen. Now pay attention to this next part. You may need a scoreboard. Daytime Wheel of Fortune bounced from NBC to CBS, then back to NBC between June of 1989 and September of 1991. All this bouncing, well, it adds up to a total of 4,215 network shows. At present, the nighttime version of Wheel of Fortune is contracted to air through 1999, and you can bet that Pat and Vanna are very happy campers. And we hope you'll be happy campers as you watch this episode of Wheel of Fortune. And by the way, you can see Wheel of Fortune each and every day on Game Show Network during Club AM at 10:45 a.m. Eastern. All right, boys and girls, it's time to open up that vast Game Show Network tape vault and pull out one of our more obscure shows. It was seen in syndication from January to September of 1975. It featured Bob Eubanks hosting his second game show and was taped at the Kuilima Hotel in Oahu, Hawaii. Can you remember it? I'll give you a moment. Well, if you did, give yourself a lovely bonus prize, because that's right, it's the Diamond Head game. Now, as you remember, the bonus round on the Diamond Head game was definitely not for the claustrophobic, because the winner was placed in a glass booth with money and slips of paper with prizes written on them blowing all over the place, and whatever they could grab out of the air in 15 seconds was, of course, theirs to keep. One last bit of Diamond Head trivia. Music for the show was written by Alan Thicke. Now, Alan wrote music for several game shows in the 1970s, including the original theme for Wheel of Fortune. So set up the luau, get the pineapples, and put up the down-hole posters. It's time to watch the Diamond Head game. I want it. Break the Bank was originally seen at various times on all three networks from 1948 to 1957. In 1976, Jack Barry and Dan Enright bought the rights to the name Break the Bank and came up with a new game. ABC began showing the new Break the Bank in April of 1976. The host was Tom Kennedy, and the program featured 9 celebrities who stayed on all week. ABC ran Break the Bank for 3 months, then the show returned for a year in syndication starting that September, hosted by Jack Barry. The Jack Barry version is what we have for you to see today. Let's see how many of the 9 celebrities you can remember as we watch and hope a contestant can break the bank. There have been only a few attempts to mix a game show with elements of a variety and music show. Thank the Lord for that. But the Fun Factory with Bobby Van was one of the good ones. Debuting in June of 1976 on NBC, the Fun Factory had contestants who were chosen from the studio audience. Now, in between questioning the players, a group of regulars performed in musical numbers and comedy skits. Now, some of these performers went on to bigger and better things. Debbie Harmon starred in the sitcom Just the Ten of Us, and Betty Thomas was later seen on Hill Street Blues and now directs episodes of various TV series. So get ready to combine comedy, music, and knowledge with the gang at the Fun Factory. Okay, here's the question. What game show became the #1 rated daytime show within 1 year of its debut and won the Emmy for Best Game Show in 1977? Survey says Family Feud. Family Feud debuted on ABC July 12, 1976, and was hosted, of course, by Richard Dawson. Richard was well known to daytime audiences as a regular panelist on Match Game. He also co-starred on the popular 1960s sitcom Hogan's Heroes. Now, on Family Feud, each question is based on a survey of 100 people, and a certain number of the responses make up the answers. You might be asked to name a famous George, for instance. Questions like these sometimes brought unusual responses. Like the time a contestant was asked to name a famous Willie, she said Willie the Pooh. Or the player who was asked, in what month of pregnancy does a woman begin to show? Her response? September. I personally think those answers are correct. Family Feud was so popular that eventually it was airing 10 times a week, 5 shows in daytime and 5 in nighttime. And as if that weren't enough, in May of 1978, ABC began airing a series of primetime Family Feud specials featuring celebrity teams. Well, Family Feud finally ran out of steam in 1985, with both the daytime and nighttime shows being canceled. However, it was revived on CBS in 1988 with a new host, comedian Ray Combs. Ray had made several successful appearances on The Tonight Show and had drawn the attention of Mark Goodson, who signed him to host the new Family Feud. This latest feud aired on CBS through 1993, and in the fall of 1994, Richard Dawson made a triumphant return to the syndicated show. Here's when and where you can see Family Feud on Game Show Network. Family Feud with Ray Combs, weekdays from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and Family Feud with Richard Dawson during prime game weeknights at 7:40 Eastern. And here's an interesting tidbit. One of the contestants in the show you're about to see is named Gretchen Johnson. Well, Richard Dawson took a liking to her, and following her appearance on the show, he asked her to dinner, and one thing led to another, and she is now Mrs. Richard Dawson. For Family Feud, the survey says success and sometimes even love. And now, on your marks, let's start the Family Feud. Before Double Dare was on Nickelodeon, there was a totally different Double Dare on CBS from December 1976 to April 1977. This one didn't have stunts or slime. It did, however, have 2 contestants and host Alex Trebek. Double Dare from Goodson Todman Productions used something that not too many shows had after the 1950s. That was an isolation booth. Both contestants were kept in them, and they were used in the bonus round. In that round, the champion played against a panel of 3 PhDs known as the Spoilers. The contestant had to give the Spoilers 5 out of 10 clues and hope they didn't guess a mystery subject. Believe me, I'm sure you'll see how it works as the show goes along. Double Dare was Alex Trebek's second American game show. The Ontario native had worked for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation doing national newscasts as well as special events. Alex also hosted a high school TV quiz in Canada. His first American show was the short-lived Wizard of Oz. In addition to the title being used again, the theme music of Double Dare made a comeback on a later show. See if you can recognize it. It was used as a theme for the first version of Cart Shark. All right, our next show is Hollywood Connection from Barry and Enright Productions. The host was Jim Lang. Hollywood Connection featured 2 contestants and 6 celebrities. The celebrities were asked multiple-choice questions dealing with their personalities, and contestants had to guess which answer the stars selected. Hollywood Connection ran for 1 season in syndication in 1977. So what do you say we go back about 17 years and see what the stars had to say on Hollywood Connection? Card Sharks is a recent favorite from Goodson Todman Productions. It had 2 lives. Card Sharks began as an NBC show in April of 1978, hosted by Jim Perry. And this was Jim's first American game show, having hosted several game shows that were seen exclusively in Canada. Now, the object of Card Sharks was to work your way through a block of 5 cards by predicting whether the next card would be higher or lower than the previous one. Players answered survey-type questions to earn chances at cards. In the bonus game, they had to work their way through 7 cards for a maximum payoff of $32,000. NBC's Card Sharks went off in October of 1981 and was brought back by CBS in January 1986 with much the same format, but with a new host, Bob Eubanks. During the 1987-88 season, a nighttime Card Sharks with Bill Rafferty was seen. Card Sharks went off the air in 1989, but lives on exclusively right here on Game Show Network. You can watch Card Sharks with Bob Eubanks weekdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Now let's get ready to call higher or lower with Card Sharks. Now it's time for everyone's favorite game of strategy, knowledge, and fun. It's tic-tac-toe. That's how the 1970s and 80s tic-tac-toe opened. But did you know, or do you remember, tic-tac-toe was originally seen in the 1950s? 12 o'clock noon on July 30th, 1956 is when tic-tac-toe was first seen on NBC. It was a simple game of questions and answers where contestants tried to make tic-tac-toe when they answered correctly. Producer Jack Barry hosted the show through 1958. Then announcer Bill Wendell took over. Many of you know that Bill Wendell has been David Letterman's announcer since the show began. Another tic-tac-toe announcer, Bill McCord, is the father of singer Billy Vera. Tic-tac-toe retired from the airwaves in October 1959 and stayed in retirement until the summer of 1978 when CBS decided to add the X's and O's to their daytime schedule. And Wink Martindale stepped up to the host podium. CBS kept the show on for 13 weeks, and about the time it went off, a previously planned syndicated version started. It stayed on through 1986, and the last season was hosted by Jim Caldwell. One of the most memorable tic-tac-toe moments was when Navy man Tom McKee won a grand total of well over $300,000 on the show. Certainly proof that game shows can change people's lives forever. Now, you can catch all the excitement of tic-tac-toe on Game Show Network as the kickoff show of Club AM weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Time now for tic-tac-toe. Hey, you enjoy watching the Miss America pageant, Miss World, or perhaps Miss Universe pageant? Well, get ready for something totally different. Chuck Berry decided to stage a spoof of beauty contest with 6 women aged 18 to 80. The show had as host comedian Rip Taylor, a panel of 3 celebrities who would rate the women on beauty, swimsuit, and talent competition, and a grand prize of $1.98 plus a tacky crown. Who else but Chuck Berry could come up with the $1.98 beauty show? The $1.98 beauty show lasted just 1 season in syndication, starting in the fall of 1978. So now, to the strains of H.C. Sweet, we present the $1.98 beauty show. And by the way, Steve Day and Laura Chambers of Club AM, our own beauties, will be along right after the $1.98 beauty show to say hello. Then I'll be back with more of the Data Pod. The answer is, created by Merv Griffin and originally debuting in 1964, this show requires 3 contestants to respond in the form of the question. The correct response is, what is Jeopardy? Truly one of television's classic game shows, Jeopardy has been on the air for a total of well over 20 seasons. When Jeopardy premiered on NBC in March of 1964, the original host was Art Fleming, who would begin each show by thanking the viewers at home and also announcer Don Harlan. The unique aspect of Jeopardy is that the contestants were given the answers and had to respond with the correct question. In addition, if they were wrong, there was a penalty, having the amount of the answer deducted from their score. Any player in the minus column after the second round was not allowed to play in the final Jeopardy round. You understood the instructions and you were able to play the game. Jeopardy was seen at noon for much of its run and was on the must-watch list of college students everywhere. In 1974, ratings started to slip, and NBC changed Jeopardy's time period twice. Finally, on January 3rd, 1975, NBC canceled Jeopardy. But, perhaps seeing the error in its ways, NBC brought Jeopardy back in 1978, but it only turned out to be for 5 months. Jeopardy then was idle until 1984, when Merv Griffin and King World decided to launch a totally new Jeopardy, with bigger money, a glitzy new set, and a new host, Alex Trebek. Things couldn't be better for Jeopardy. It has garnered 13 Emmy Awards since 1984, and the show is renewed to the end of 1999. Game Show Network is proud to show Jeopardy with Alex Trebek each weekday morning at 11:20 Eastern Time as part of Club AM. Now, here's 30 minutes of answers and questions on Jeopardy! Pantomime has been the feature of a few different game shows over the years. Mike Stokey's Pantomime Quiz and Stump the Stars, along with Goodson Todman's Show-Offs and Body Language, come to mind. Which brings us to our next show. Celebrity Charades aired in syndication from January to September 1979. The host was ventriloquist Jay Johnson with his dummy Squeaky. You may remember Jay as Chuck Campbell on the sitcom Soap. Celebrity Charades was a show with 2 teams of 4 celebrities playing to win $500 for their favorite charity. Let's tune in and play along with the gang on Celebrity Charades. Now, in the world of relationship game shows, Chuck Barris indeed holds the record. There's the Newlywed Game, the Family Game, and even How's Your Mother-in-Law? Now, in the fall of 1979, Chuck came up with something not done before. Leave it to Chuck. And probably not to be done again. It was called Freeze a Crowd, a show that tried to determine Who knows a husband better, his wife or his secretary? Lots of luck. Three's a Crowd was staged in a similar manner to the Newlywed Game. Three husbands were asked some questions that could relate either to their wives or their secretaries. Then the secretaries were then brought on stage to see if they could match responses. And of course, finally the wives were brought on to try and match their husband's answers. Now, couples appearing on the show almost certainly needed a solid marriage, as the questions were often provocative and suggestive. Now, the host of Three's a Crowd was Jim Peck. Native of Wisconsin, Jim's first hosting job was ABC's The Big Showdown in 1975. He would later host Hot Seat, Second Chance, and You Don't Say. Three's a Crowd lasted a little over half a season, going off in February 1980. I think there were too many divorces on the show. Here's an episode of Three's a Crowd we hope you enjoy. Now, game show production companies often get letters from viewers asking if kids could be on their shows. And some programs produce special weeks for youngsters like Team Jeopardy. In 1980, Jack Barry and Dan Enright decided to make a kid's version of The Joker's Wild. The result was Joker, Joker, Joker. Hosted by Jack Barry, it lasted one season and played much the same as the adult version. Here come the kids on Joker, Joker, Joker. Okay, folks, here's more game show fun from Barry and Enright Productions. It's called Play the Percentages and was syndicated in 1980. It was a game of prediction with two couples playing. And the line of questioning involved predicting what percentage of people in a particular group could answer a specific question. Jeff Edwards presided over the predictions, which unpredictably lasted only 9 months. Now, I'm 100% sure, though, that we're ready to watch Play the Percentages. The original version of our next game show, Camouflage, was seen on ABC in 1961 and 1962. Years later, Chuck Barrett bought the rights to the show, and in February 1980, Camouflage returned in syndication, hosted by Tom Campbell. The contestants on Camouflage had to trace the outlines of an item concealed in a cartoon drawing. Okay. The episode of Camouflage you're about to see has been concealed since the original viewing 15 years ago. We hope you enjoy. All right, it's time to get back to the Barry and Enright Game Show Factory. Let's see if you can recall this show. It had 3 spinning wheels, 1 with a category, 1 with a dollar amount, and the last with a number between 1 and 5. If you remembered Bullseye, well, deduct 1 whammy. The affable Jim Lang presided over the show. Bullseye debuted in fall of 1980 as a contestants-only or civilian show, but in January 1982 became Celebrity Bullseye with guest stars competing for their favorite charity. Bullseye fell off target with the ratings and went off in September 1982. But it lives on exclusively on Game Show Network. All right, before we continue, I want to remind you that Steve and Laura will be back at midnight Eastern for late night games and on Club AM Monday morning at 9 Eastern Time. I have a question for you. Who do you think has hosted the most game shows? I'll give you a hint. He's hosted 23 of them and was a panelist or guest celebrity on countless others. Well, that criteria could only have been met by the late Bill Cullen. Bill was born in 1920 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He became a disc jockey at the age of 19, and in 1946 became the host of the radio quiz Winner Take All, which was later moved to television. He also worked in the 1950s as a hockey and football announcer, and even found time to operate his own charter flying service. Our next show is one of the many Bill hosted, Blockbusters from Goodson Todman Productions. Blockbusters debuted in October of 1980 as a replacement for David Letterman's morning show. Blockbusters had a different kind of contestant structure. One player competed against a team of 2 related players to see if 2 heads were better than 1. Players were asked questions whose answer began with a certain letter and worked their way across a game board vertically or horizontally. Blockbusters enjoyed a 1.5-year run on NBC and was brought back in 1987 for 5 months. In this new show, hosted by Bill Rafferty, only 2 players competed. Blockbusters with Bill Cullen is part of our early evening lineup here on Game Show Network. Look for it each weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Now we have a Blockbusters episode with Bill Cullen for you to enjoy. See you in about a half hour. All right, we have for your edification and viewing pleasure an interesting combination of game show and human interest program. The show is Fantasy, and the hour-long show aired on NBC from August 1982 to September 1983. Co-hosted by Peter Marshall and Leslie Uggams, fantasy granted the wishes of pre-selected contestants as the cameras rolled, capturing all the emotional aspects of every fantasy for America to see. Fantasy was produced by Merrill Heater, one half of the team behind the long-running Hollywood Squares. Time now for a look at fantasies fulfilled on Fantasy. The Dean of Hosts, Bill Cullen, returns for our next two shows. First up is a show with a delightfully simple premise. Contestants have to guess words described by children on Mark Goodson Productions' Child's Play. CBS premiered Child's Play on September 20th, 1982, and it aired for 1 year. I ask you now, do you know what replaced Child's Play? I'll give you a few moments. Game Show Network will present Child's Play each weekday afternoon at 1:30 Eastern Time. By the way, it was pressure luck. Let's see what the kids are talking about as we watch Child's Play. Well, I'm here to tell you that Charades made a comeback in June of 1984 with Body Language, a new Mark Goodson production for CBS. Body Language was hosted by Tom Kennedy, one of the most prolific game show hosts, hosting 14 shows in his productive career. Tom was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and came to Los Angeles in 1952, where he found work as an announcer in local radio and TV. And in 1958, he got his first hosting job on a show called Big Game. Through the years, Tom hosted such favorites as Name That Tune, Password Plus, Split Second, and You Don't Say. Now, the format of Body Language had two teams of three made up of a contestant and two celebrities. One player would pantomime words that would fit into a puzzle describing a mystery subject. The object was to guess the mystery subject. Now, the episode we've selected from the year-and-a-half run of Body Language is very special because one of the guest stars is none other than the great Lucille Ball. We hope you enjoy it. During the early 1980s, trivia became the nation's passion. The board game Trivial Pursuit took the nation by storm. Everyone went trivia crazy. It was only a matter of time before a trivia-based game show appeared. In 1984, ABC and Mark Goodson Productions brought us Trivia Trap. On Trivia Trap, Bob Eubanks presided over two teams of three players. One team was over the age of 30, and one team was under 30. Trivia Trap required players to eliminate wrong answers from a choice of four that were shown corresponding to a question. Choosing the correct answer right away would make a team lose control of the board. Winning teams could win up to $10,000 in the bonus game. That's how the game is played, and you can see Trivia Trap on Game Show Network Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Now let's see if you can spot the wrong answers on this episode of Trivia Trap. Game show host Wink Martindale created our next show, which was seen simultaneously on the USA Cable Network and in Canada on the Global Television Network beginning in 1986. It was called Bumper Stumpers and was co-produced by Barry and Enright Productions. Canadian personality Al Dubois is the host. Bumper Stumpers had two teams of contestants attempting to match certain personalized license plates to the type of people who might own them. The show ran on USA Network for 3 years until 1989. Here's 30 minutes of license plate lingo on Bumper Stumpers. Veteran producer Dan Enright introduced All About the Opposite Sex as a syndicated show in June of 1990. David Sparks, formerly of the new Crosswits, was the host. On All About the Opposite Sex, there was a team of 7 men and a team of 7 women, makes sense, plus their respective rooting sections. Team members were asked 3-part multiple-choice questions about dealing with the opposite sex. Points were awarded on how well one team could predict how the other team answered the question. After a 9-week run, All About the Opposite Sex faded from view. But we at Game Show Network, in our never-ending quest to figure out what makes people tick, have secured the show and are pleased to offer an episode of All About the Opposite Sex. Debuting along with All About the Opposite Sex was another Barry and Enright show, Hold Everything, with comedian Pat Bullard as host. Hold Everything had 3 celebrities trying to predict how people being secretly videotaped might react in various situations. The celebrity with a high score would win $1,000 for their favorite charity. Now, Hold Everything was quite similar to a show you saw much earlier in our Game-a-thon, All About Faces, which Dan Enright also produced. Now, Game Show Network presents Hold Everything. Our next game show, Quiz Kids Challenge, evolved from the original Quiz Kids, which has a long and varied history, and I'll tell you about it. Quiz Kids was born on radio and then seen on NBC and CBS either in prime time or on Sunday afternoon. at various times from March 1949 to September 1956. On the show, a panel of 5 children tried to answer questions sent in by home viewers, and winners would win U.S. savings bonds. The show returned in 1978 with Jim McCrell, and again in 1981, hosted by producer Norman Lear. In 1990, the Quiz Kids made a comeback as the Quiz Kids Challenge. The host was actor Jonathan Prince. This new show had a team of 3 adults playing against a team of 3 youngsters. Quiz Kids Challenge lasted 1 season before the kids were retired once again. Now let's see who knows more, the kids or the adults, on Quiz Kids Challenge. All right, we have come to the last show in our Game-a-thon, but it's a winner. Merv Griffin created Ruckus, a game show that is very unique because it wasn't widely seen. What's unique about that, you ask? Well, it only aired in one city, New York, for 13 weeks in 1991. And that means that most of you watching will be seeing it for the very first time. Taped at Merv Griffin's Resorts Hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey, it was hosted by comedian-magician, the amazing Jonathan. On Ruckus, studio audience members performed various stunts to try and win cash. There's also a quiz round played against the clock, where players successfully answering questions can pick a star off the wall that contains more stunts to be performed. Ruckus is aptly named. It's a loud and frantic free-for-all. We hope you like it. Well, that's it. You've just taken a sneak peek into the vaults of Game Show Network's library. Some shows that ran for years, some shows that ran for months, and even some that ran for just weeks. And many of these shows in our Game-a-thon are on the Game Show Network schedule right now. Others we kind of teased you with, you'll be seeing them sometime soon. Game Show Network is your 24-hour source for classic game shows from the 1950s through today. We hope you can join us each and every day to share in all the fun and excitement that game shows provide. Hey, and don't forget to join Steve Day and Laura Chambers weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for Club AM. And Steve and Laura are also with you weekdays at midnight Eastern for Late Night Games. We also have our weekend special, Wide World of Games, which can be seen Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's 2 hours of the most special game shows in our vast collection. Hey, we've really enjoyed putting together this Game-a-thon for you. I mean, after all, you're very important to us. So write us, fax us, tell us what you think about the shows you've seen on Game Show Network. And if you've watched the entire Game-a-thon, you're amazing. You are a game show fan extraordinaire. You're also a little, well, in any event, I was here too. In any event, this is Peter Tomarken. Thanks for being with us, and stay tuned to Game Show Network. I'll be back in just a few moments with more of Prime Game.